Hello, everyone, and a pleasant good morning, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, we do apologize for the late start. We normally start at 10 o'clock, but this morning we were having some technical issues that were beyond our control that we were able to resolve. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb. Please remember to like and share this live stream. Now, yesterday, the international community observed the unofficial 420 holiday. The date has come to be known as the official stoner holiday, in which many marijuana smokers around the world celebrate their love of the herb. The number 420 itself has also come to be associated with marijuana and smoking, as well as with consuming other aspects of this wonderful plant, and is often used as a colloquial term for the flower and the act of consuming it in whatever form. Now, smokers see 420 not only as a day to kick back and celebrate their love of the good herb, but also push for broader legalization and decriminalization of marijuana federally in the United States and nationally in other national jurisdictions around the world. So what does the marijuana legalization map look like in the Caribbean? In the Bahamas, the government there in 2023 has unveiled several bills aimed at legalizing marijuana for medical and religious purposes and decriminalizing possession of small amounts. In January of 2023, the U.S. Virgin Islands legalized marijuana for recreational use. Now, back in 2018, Antigua and Barbuda decriminalized marijuana for up to 15 grams for personal use. Last month, Barbados, by way of its Attorney General, announced that it will, in short order, decriminalize cannabis possession for up to 14 grams, as Trinidad and Tobago did in 2019, and Jamaica being the first in the English-speaking Caribbean to do in 2015. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Ralph Gonsalves administration there decriminalized marijuana for medical purposes and scientific research. So this brings us to Grenada and the inability of the current administration to properly kickstart Grenada's own push for marijuana decriminalization and reform, as it articulated in the last campaign. Now, apart from the flashy photo op of the Prime Minister of the country posing with a marijuana plant last year, there has been no substantial developments from the government-appointed Marijuana Commission of September 2022, chaired by former Senator Rolanda McQueen, who actively campaigned for this current administration in the last election. The commission was expected to not only hold public consultations on this issue, but was also mandated to prepare a final report with advice on the design of a new legislative framework to legalize cannabis within a legal and regulatory framework for its production and sale. Our sources tell us the outgoing commission accomplished nothing, which begs the question, why was this so? And why was the Grenadian public not given a public accounting for their inability to produce any report on their lack of progress? In fact, we also ask, were any consultations held, and with whom? And what were the results of those consultations? Now, while the administration continues to drag its feet on this issue, criminal marijuana enforcement continues unabated, notwithstanding the fact that there already is proposed legislation in Grenada's legislative queue to amend the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act. The main objectives of the 2021 amendments were to allow anyone under the age of 18 to be in possession of 28 grams or less of marijuana, and to allow each homeowner over the age of 18 to grow no more than 5 trees within the confines of their private homes. Under that particular piece of proposed legislation, Rastafarians would be able to use the herb solely for religious purposes as a sacrament in adherence to the Rastafarian faith and at their places of worship. So on the occasion of 420, we urge the administration to hasten its steps towards marijuana decriminalization with a view to getting Grenada in line with the rest of the region. And at this time, I wish to welcome our first two guests for this week's edition of the Bubb Report. We are joined for the very first time by Ms. Jenny Simon, who is the host of Simon Says, as well as Mr. William Joseph, who is a political analyst in Grenada. Lady and gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Same here. Good morning.
William, welcome. I'm sure that you do know Jenny Simon. I believe the both of you served in the same party.
Course.
I'm not too sure if you served at the same time, but it's good to have the both of you here on the report.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Wonderful. Good morning. Morning, Jenny.
Good morning. Good morning, Willie.
Willie, this week I don't have your sparring partner Michael Batiste. He's been having some internet issues, but I would be reserving. I'm sure your friend Michael is probably listening right now. But I would be reserving a special interview with Mr. Michael Batiste because I have some questions for him. And Mr. Batiste, if you're listening, sir, I do have a grilling for you. So I would be reserving a special spot for you and for Father Gerald Paul. Of course, Father Gerald Paul, if you're listening. We have been trying to invite you on the Bubb Report, sir, but I'm not too sure if you're afraid of our platform. Don't worry, I would not be exercising you or anything like that. But I want to begin with you, Willie, unconventionally, because there are, and of course, I want Jenny to jump in as well. I'm not sure if Jenny is Catholic, but Willie tells me that he attends the Catholic Church. He didn't say that he was Catholic. I noticed here. But have you been following? Have you been following? This to me was the, shall we say, the April surprise. I was honestly not expecting the developments in respect to Father Gerald Paul in the way that it unfolded. Willie, as someone who is an adherent of the faith, any comments on these developments that really spilled remarkably out in the open, starting with the Chrism Mass during Holy Week?
Yes, thank you. Briefly, if you go to Revelation, I think it's the second chapter there. The Lord instructs John to write to the 7 churches of Asia Minor, and one of those churches is described as a compromised church. The compromised church. It may well be that what we have on our hands now is further evidence of a church that has been largely compromised. Now, to the specific issue, people who know Gerald Paul tell me that there is a Father Gerald Paul and there is a Mr. Gerald Paul. So one has to be careful about who is speaking, whether it is the priest or whether it is a gentleman who at the time is not speaking as a priest. Nonetheless, to my mind, I think that Gerald Paul as priest would have been on much stronger ground if he was able to come to the public and say, listen, there was this retreat where I requested that we discuss the Gaza issue, but I was put down. In other words, they refused to discuss it. I think in that context, he would have been on much stronger ground. He didn't tell us that because he didn't do that. And so he came out, and any reasonable person would conclude that what happened was an abuse of place. An abuse of place. And secondly, for me, the question of his tone and mood, really disrespect for his bishop. I don't hold any brief for anybody on this issue. That's how I see it, right? I believe there was total contempt for his bishop, as if the bishop was some little boy, Clive, and so on. So really, I think he lost it for me on those two grounds: abuse of place, disrespect to his bishop, and as I said initially, the fact that he could not tell us, because he did not, at the retreat itself, ask that the matter of Gaza be discussed. He didn't do that. So it comes across as some amount of grandstanding, in my view, on an issue that is very important. So we must separate it. The Gaza talk by Father Paul was the occasion for the conflict or the war, if you will. It was not the cause of the war. So that's my take on it.
All right. I'm not too sure, Jenny, if you've been following that. I mean, I don't think this has ever happened in Grenadian history, let alone in Caribbean history. So even if you're not a person of faith, I'm sure, or a Catholic, this has been an issue animating national discourse. Yes.
I followed it. I've been followed. I don't think you can't. You have to. It's there. It's in the open. It's there. I do agree with Willie, except for the fact that he said there are two Gerald Paul. A Father Gerald Paul, and I have never met Father Gerald Paul. In other words, I've never seen that side, even in the church. I've been to funerals where he officiated, and the truth is, I've never seen Father Gerald Paul. I've only seen the person, even on the pulpit, right? I've never seen the father part of him at all. And I just think they need to stop. I just think it's so embarrassing, really, for the church. Yeah. And he is very disrespectful and not going by rules and by laws. I don't understand that. They were asked to keep quiet for 2 weeks. And they come back to the mediation. And I mean, he couldn't do that. He's all over the place in the media saying all sorts of things and disrespecting the church, if you ask me.
Do you think perhaps he received some sympathy from the public in respect of how he handled the initial public reaction? But do you think that he overplayed his hand at this point?
Way over, if you ask me. Way over. Yeah, okay. I think so.
Yeah. Well, we will be watching this space to see what the Catholic Church will be doing following from this. But of course, George Brezan said many years ago that Grenada is perpetually the island of conflict, and perhaps where he's resting peacefully in the great beyond, of course, he would probably be saying, "See, this is why I titled the book in the way that I titled it." But panelists, what we want to do is to really look at the issues that has been animating public discourse in the first quarter of 2024. We are now into the first part of the second quarter of 2024, and several issues have been animating public discourse. And what we always try to do here on the Bubb Report is, before we go on to the next quarter, is to bring public interest parties together to discuss these matters. And so that's why we felt it was important to assemble two people who ostensibly comment on these national issues by way of different platforms. And so we want to begin first. In the first quarter of 2024, one of the issues that was front and center in Grenadian life was the tragic murder of Kathy Brandel and Ralph Hendry at the hands of two escaped prisoners who escaped the South St. George police station, and the subsequent National Security Minister's handling of this particular issue. And Jenny, I want to begin with you. Let us talk about how the National Security Minister and the National Security Establishment, the Royal Grenada Police Force as well as part of that establishment, handle that particular issue. And then I'll go over to Willie for a response.
Poorly, very, very, very poor. I believe it was handled very poorly. And even after the Prime Minister came out and spoke, they showed no empathy. He showed no empathy, no passion. He was not apologetic to the families of the couple that lost their lives by now. I mean, I guess it's declared that they've been murdered, or they've disappeared, really. And so I think it was very, very badly and poorly handled by the administration. I see no reason why. The reason the Prime Minister gave, because he was given the police time to develop the story and to do the investigation and stuff like that. And before he spoke, and I think that's hogwash, really. I think I believe, as most countries do, every country do, when there's something like that, something that big happen, they come out and they speak. I mean, if you look at the US, and so sometimes all 12 people standing there with the commissioner and all the councils and everybody come out and they speak, and they give you some kind of assurance or reassurance in some cases that they're working on it. When they have mass shootings, and so they come out and speak immediately. And then as time goes on, you might have to come back and say, well, this is what happened. He didn't have to come back. Maybe the commissioner of police, the RGPF, could have done that. And his people could have come out and say, well, this is where we are. And so, but I believe that they missed the boat. They should have come out initially. Not the Prime Minister was away for the first few days, and but he left before it happened. And no member of the cabinet, not one of them said anything. We had an acting Prime Minister. Nobody spoke. Nobody spoke to the family, to us as a people, as to what is happening, what they're thinking, where they are with the whole issue. I mean, it was poor.
Yes, William, the Prime Minister's contention, however, was that he does not, as Minister of National Security, and that seems to have been his posture. In other words, he is not going to get intimately involved into the day-to-day functioning of the Royal Grenada Police Force, so as to not give the appearance of political interference from the political directorate of the state. That was his position. And he also made the point that one also must not only speak out on these matters when it involves foreigners. So in other words, I suppose what he was trying to say was that, well, perhaps his approach was that if he's going to be speaking out on these matters, he would have a balanced approach. In other words, he will address these issues across the board and not because it involved foreigners in this case. Willie, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks again. Well, let's begin at the beginning to say that this question of security is one of the areas of responsibility that the Constitution assigns to the government of Grenada when it says that there is a duty to run the business of government. It's just like running the economy or taking care of the education system or healthcare and so on. Security is one of those high value items that any and every government must address. So there are sensitivities that attend aspects of the security issue. Some of it, as citizens, we may not expect the Minister for National Security to come and tell us everything as such. But there are some aspects which require the Minister for National Security to speak to the public. This is very important. And so if the minister must speak to the public, the minister has a determination to make as to whether it makes sense to do so via a national address, and especially in this case where the Minister for National Security is the Prime Minister, or whether to do so via a press conference. Culturally and in practice, you say the Prime Minister is going to address the nation on an issue of grave national importance, and a large percentage of the population is going to tune in to hear what the Prime Minister has to say on the issue. It's cultural. If you say press conference, well, you're talking small numbers. And then the media is going to sift through the thing, and they're going to come and they're going to filter it, and they're going to take aspects of it and retail that to us. So some of the thing is lost. The point I'm making is that on this particular issue, in my view, there was a duty, given the nature of the issue, and the public disquiet and fear prevailing at the time. In my view, the Minister for National Security and Prime Minister owed the nation a duty to address the nation on the issue. So I did not agree with this press conference thing and so on with the police. The police could have given, operational information subsequently, meaning subsequent to the national address. But the first cut of this thing has to be the Prime Minister talking to the Grenadian people on an issue of grave national importance. And this business about foreigners and non-foreigners, well, I don't see how that arises, really.
Right. Yeah. So I as a student of history, as someone who does research, and as someone who covered many issues in Grenada in the past, I am going to share this article. Now, this was from December 28th, 2011. What does the title of the article say? Grenada PM promises probe into Toronto man's death. Quoting from the article, Grenada's Prime Minister Tillman Thomas says there will be a full investigation into the death of a Toronto man who was allegedly beaten by police. The Prime Minister is seeking information about the circumstances surrounding the death on Tuesday of 39-year-old Oscar Bartholomew. Now, this happened. Now, this is titled December 28th. This was the date in which that was published. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that former Prime Minister Tillman Thomas, NDC's Tillman Thomas, without knowing all of the circumstances surrounding the investigation, did, as you say, Willie, address the public on the matter without getting into the specifics of the case, knowing that it is the bailiwick of the Royal Grenada Police Force to do so. But historically, we do have precedents in Grenada where leaders have addressed these issues. So for those who are probably saying, well, he has to wait for an investigation to occur, history tells us otherwise. Jenny?
I agree, and that's the point I was making, that he needed to come out and speak to the nation and speak to us and give us some assurance as to what's going on. And instead, when he came out, he went and told us that the RGPF really is responsible for the death of these two people, because the guys got away because the security system was inadequate. Mm-hmm. Really. Yeah. And so it just made it really, really worse and really heartbreaking, because you're saying to yourself, if that wasn't so, these the tourists, they might still be alive. If these three young men did not get out of prison, of the cell, or where they had them holding at the station, the South Station, And I'm agreeing, he needed to come out and speak to us immediately. As a matter of fact, he should have done so before he left Grenada to go to
Guyana for the heads meeting. Yes,
he should have
absolutely.
said something to us, even if it was at the airport when he was leaving, something to us. Yeah. But don't just leave us hanging for about a month. It was about 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that Ralph Hendry and Kathy Brandel issue unfortunately took up all of the oxygen in the room on the heels of Grenada's 50th anniversary of independence. Because say what you will, I did enjoy some of the events of the 50th anniversary of independence. That was a major milestone for the state of Grenada. But that event happened sadly a few weeks after that. And no one was talking about independence. No one was talking about the drone show of any of that. But we are in our 50th year still. And of course, how was that? How was the independence for you, Jenny, and for Willie?
All right. Well, let me, Jenny, if you don't mind, let me kick off on this, please.
Yes.
I make a distinction between celebration and construction. Celebrate we must, and we should, and we did.
Yes.
While we were celebrating, we also had a duty, and we still have a duty to construct a path for the next 50 years. You see, and we have not addressed that. We have not begun, as far as I can tell, addressing that. Now, look. If you check on things, you'd realize that over the last 50 or so years, demographics have changed in this Ghanaian society. The economy has changed. Even aspects of the landscape have changed. But there's been one constant: the politics. Our politics have not changed. And therefore, we are still locked up in all political thinking. It is the very thinking and practice in that politics that led us to blood and tears in this country that we all love. So a duty is owed to the Grenadian people as we begin the next 50 years of our independence, to begin to produce a new type of politics in the Grenadian society. Listen, you look at it, right? The 70s coming forward, there's been the presumption of leadership. In other words, guys, male and female, who by virtue of the acquisition of higher education and this and that, came home and said, listen, I have this and I am that, so I could lead country. I describe it as a presumption of leadership. And perhaps at the time there was, that's what we had to go by. But given our experiences for 50 years, I think that we now should be in a position to understand that we need to prepare our young people for leadership. So I'm drawing a distinction between the presumption of leadership, that's the old model, and the preparation for leadership, so that we get a better quality of Grenadian citizen involved in the politics at the party level and so on, into the parliament and into the cabinet and so on, so we get a better chance at this thing. Up to this point, we have made a mess by and large. One or two good things here and there, but it has come with a lot of pain in many cases. And so I do think that we need to put in place arrangements to begin to build a better set of arrangements to strengthen us for the next 50 years.
Jenny, your thoughts on Willie's articulation? He's saying that we do need a different approach to how we are engaging with leadership in the country. But I was under the impression that that this is what the last election was about: vintage leadership versus future leadership. We have a lot of young people in the current administration. But what I hear you saying here is that while it might be new wine, that new wine is stored in old jars.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Jenny, your thoughts?
You know, I said the presumption of leadership.
Presumption of leadership. Yes.
Totally agreed. I don't know if it's my side, but my internet, I'm not hearing you guys properly, and it's dropping at points. So
okay. Yeah, it might be on your side, but go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting some.
We can
I'm
hear you
having some
loud and
issues
clear.
there. But
Yes.
I totally agree with Willie with that. I don't think that it's age per se that matters in what he's trying to say. Like, they're young, but new and fresh ideas we're looking for. And you put it correctly. New wine in old jars. That's exactly what we have. And the celebration, it was just a bigger celebration that we normally have with the same sort of events and everything, and nothing new and fresh, except, of course, the drones that everybody enjoyed at the end of the celebration. So I don't believe that, as Willie said, that we have anything. They haven't given us anything to look forward to for the next 50 years, per se. I mean, it won't be past my time, I'm sure. But I agree totally with Willie. I agree. Totally.
One of the hallmarks of that period.
Yes.
I don't know whether folks took note of it.
Yeah.
Now, the regime campaigned on this notion of transformation.
Yes.
Some of us have called them to school to clarify that, to make it plain, to publish the framework for that. And we've been waiting for that. Put that aside. The Prime Minister gave 2 addresses to the Grenadian people at Independence 50. And in neither of those 2 occasions or addresses did he even make a reference to transformation. So I am wondering whether this thing has dropped off the radar. What is its status? I mean, the people who are handling the Prime Minister.
Willie, I'm going to push back there slightly, because
Sure.
it was an independence celebration. I don't think the Prime Minister ought to have politicized the independence celebration by making reference to transformation. What he did, and folks may say, well, now he's sounding like an NDC. No, folks, I'm not doing that. But what the Prime Minister did was that he referenced the Sustainable Development Plan in one of his addresses, which to me was a much more encompassing vision, which in many respects might have also encompassed a lot of what they articulated in respect of their transformation agenda.
No, to refer to transformation in the context of the anniversary of our independence and looking ahead, it's not politicize it. It's not drawing from a political party pool. This is a national issue. This is a national issue. What we are talking about with respect to, and that's why I say this issue the regime needed to have defined what they meant, even today, what they mean by transformation. But at ground level, we take it that it is a set of intentions to radically change how we're doing things for the better. What is produced, how things are done, how just the delivery of goods and services to the Grenadian people, lawmaking in the parliament, the whole works. That we are going to put this thing at a different level, because why? We want to achieve more and better than we had in the past. So it is legitimate. There's no one who would have said that for him to have referred to transformation meant that he was politicizing the occasion. I disagree with you very strongly, my brother and friend. Not at all. Very, very, very important for us to have heard from him, because why? This is the government of the day. You are leading us into the next 50. The transformation is an important thing. It's valid.
Okay.
But let us understand, you must cause us to understand what you mean by it, what is going to be involved, and how we, the people, could participate in making it real.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let us move on. One of the issues that I believe transcends administrations and is a fundamental development issue has to do with healthcare. The New Today newspaper, not a paper that I agree with, given one of the headlines this week. I thought that was just really salacious and ridiculous. But healthcare continues to be, I would say, a millstone around the necks of the developmental necks of Grenada and Grenadians. Within the first quarter of the year, of course, the administration announced a cabinet reshuffle in which they included a new Minister of Health. That's Mr. Telesford in St. George Southeast constituency as the Minister of Health. let us talk about a lot of the issues that the New Today reported on. It reported on continued issues around care delivery, issues with morale around the nurses that they're having. But of course, the administration would say that, as the former Minister of Health articulated, that they have to really look at the underlying structural factors that cause our healthcare to be in the state that it is first. So in other words, before the healthcare system can get better, it does take these adjustments first before it can get to a place where Grenadians can be comfortable with the quality of healthcare that they can receive from the state mechanism. Jenny, I would begin with you on that question.
I didn't hear your question properly. It dropped quite
Yes.
a bit.
Yes, around healthcare. How has the administration handled healthcare in the last first quarter of the year?
Well, Dr. Bubb, they're campaigning on putting healthcare on the front burner. That was the exact words used in instances. I give them a fail up until now. We know that everything can be fixed in the moment. We know that very well because we have struggled with poor healthcare for maybe decades. We've been struggling with poor healthcare. It's administration after administration. But they're holding the wheel now, and we're heading into 2 years. And if you're going to put something on your front burner, and this is where we are, where we have to go to clinics in the different districts, and if you want to say borrow medicines and materials and so to take to the general hospital, I mean, that is terrible. That could never be front burner, right? And yes, you met what you met. You promise you can fix it. And so we must see that you're fixing it. It's not getting better. And in my opinion, it's getting worse from information reaching me, from my own investigations, from just listening to members of the public, to citizens call in on radio or call to me to see what has been going on at the general hospital and in the different clinics as well. It is terrible. And to just cop out and say, no government could fix this in a certain period of time, I think it's appalling. Because we always hear a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. If you're not healthy, you can't even study in school. And it starts there by education, from education. You can't perform if you don't have a healthy nation. And so this is something that they promise to transform the healthcare system. And we're still waiting for the transformation. The staff is reducing. We have quite a few. The nurses, they keep migrating. Yeah. They keep migrating. And even with the moratorium, they got the $500. They keep migrating. It didn't help. And the moral standing of the health practitioners. Before, you always heard about the nurses, but now we're hearing about doctors exclaiming on the wards when they were told, well, doc, we don't have that medicine available. Antibiotics. When you hear doctors start to speak out and talk about it, it has to be really bad. It has to be really, really bad for it to get to this stage. Because, they're professionals and they don't really speak out like that. And so they dropped the ball there again. Yeah. They dropped the ball there again. And we should see, all we're hearing about is a new hospital. But in the meantime, what happened? What happens to the livelihoods, the lives of our people when we have a very high infant mortality rate? And in some cases, we're losing both mother and babies. We just can't continue like that. Our people's lives matters.
Willie, as I indicated before, it's healthcare is systemic. Healthcare delivery in the country is systemic. It's not it transcends administrations. But Willie, your thoughts?
Yes, but briefly, the government started off by putting transition teams in place. And I thought, without knowing more, that was a sensible approach. Now, the transition team that was assigned to health needed to understand its mandate because of the uniqueness of health and healthcare in the society. We've had 2 budgets. So the question of resource allocation, that question, we've had 2 opportunities to address in those 2 budgets. So what are the low-hanging fruits, if you will, in health? The transition team ought to have identified those, and worked out the game plan for ensuring that those things are reaped successfully. Why? Because on the citizen side, people need access and to enjoy the benefits of basic medicines and medication. On the staff side, they need to feel comfortable. They need to be confident that the issues are understood and that the planning is going in the right direction. So it means that in this case, perhaps more than in any other case of the business of government, one needed to ensure that the arrangements made sense, that the allocations made sense, that the deliverables were known, and that in fact they were brought to the table. So if we are experiencing what is being described now, it suggests to me that we have not done the homework adequately and that we need to move very, very quickly to fix it. Because it is one thing to say, this is the state of play, and that might be factual. But we can't and shouldn't leave it there. We ought to rush sensibly to put arrangements that make sense to correct and to fix and to remedy the situation. So that's my view on it.
Very well. And of course, there has been other developments. Of course, the administration indicated that they were trying to get into partnerships around transforming primary healthcare, which, as you know, is a serious concern in Grenada in respect of the capacity of our clinics or decentralized clinics to provide care. And so there is a Saudi Arabia partnership that they indicated. There was also a ceremony, I believe, in March around transforming primary healthcare. There is another partnership that they entered into with I believe it's the Afia Foundation is the name of the foundation. So there are issues there, but at the end of the day, the citizens do want to see what that delivery would look like as well. I think that is also important. As the Minister of Implementation says, implementation rate. Let us see what the implementation rate would look like in respect of those programs that were rolled out. Jenny?
Yeah, I was saying that the former Minister of Health, months ago, launched primary health care. Mm-hmm. They had a big ceremony in St. John, and it was supposed to kick off because, of course, they have this fancy new polyclinic out there. And yes, months ago, and all we saw was that launch. Nothing happened after the launch. Nothing happened after the launch. And primary healthcare is very important, especially on the western side, well, in the rural areas, I should say. Because if you have an emergency and you have to leave the rural area to come down to St. George's at the General Hospital, it ain't an emergency anymore. Mm-hmm. And we did lose a young mother and her baby like that coming from St. Patrick. Mm-hmm. And she was a healthcare and a nurse, as a matter of fact, right?
Yeah.
So I was very happy when I saw that launch, because I'd spoken about it, and then a few days after, they had this great launch out there, and I congratulated them, and I was very happy about that, because we need to get primary healthcare going. We cannot depend on the general hospital, because Princess Alice is a big clinic. That is not a hospital. That is a big clinic. So we have one half functioning hospital in Grenada at the moment, and public hospital, and that's the general hospital.
Yeah, no, that is a very important, and one of the issues as well in respect of healthcare is our continued dependence on the kindness of the People's Republic of Cuba. Again, this year is, of course, the 45th anniversary of diplomatic relations. The Minister of Health did travel to Cuba with the delegation, in which Cuba renewed its commitment as part of that memorandum of understanding to continue to provide resources, the human resource capacity to Grenada by way of its medical brigade. But the question that I ask myself long term is, in respect of Cuba's continued economic woes, how long would they be able to sustain that program? And what happens, God forbid, if that wealth of human resource is no longer available from Cuba in the future? Then what happens? Yes?
But even with it being available, Kalon, for a while now, I don't think we have been enjoying that and getting much benefit from that. The language barrier, for one, is a major issue. I've been to the hospital with my daughter, and you cannot understand what they're saying, and they can't understand what you're saying. And it takes a long period for you to actually get what they're trying to say to you, or you to them. And so we have an issue with that. We have our own doctors who come back to Grenada, and they all head down to St. George's University. Why? I'm not sure. If they're not getting the job, they're not being employed by the government. And this is not just now. This has been happening, right? And so we have then, of course, the Cubans who come in and start off at the General Hospital. Okay, these days, quite a few of them are in private practice now. I don't know how the transition happened, but most of them now are in private practice. We have a few at the General Hospital. And so that is an issue. I normally say, I remember the days when we had Cuban doctors coming to Grenada, and you felt safe going to see visit a doctor that's Cuban. I have been saying, I find like we get in seconds now from Cuba. And from what you've been hearing from patients, if the ones in private practice that they go to. And so I'm not sure that is something we can celebrate anymore.
Yep. Willie?
Well, that is a very important point Jenny's making there, that last point especially, because the Cubans are in the business of trading their medical expertise. So there is money in return for the supply of that expertise. And there must be some formula by which they decide who goes where, right? A poor country like Grenada clearly would hardly be able, perhaps would not be able to offer as much as another country X to the Cubans. Remember, I say it's a tradable. In other words, the Cubans are doing business with the medical people.
Yeah.
So we have to understand.
It's an export. Yes,
I think she's very right. That we may not be getting the highest quality. I don't know. I mean, we may not be. And in that case, there must be some concern. So it's one thing for the administration to seek to get some help in that area. It's another thing to ensure that the help is effective. Otherwise, we would not be better off. The citizens would not be better off. The healthcare system would not be better off. So there is some work to be done there. And that means that we have to begin to diversify on the supply of expertise in the area of medical support coming from other countries. So that's a task that we assign to the people that we send to these missions. You see, because it is an area of resource mobilization. It's an aspect, it's not just money. It includes things like training, it includes technical transfers, it includes skills transfer. At the highest level, HRD benefits being delivered to Grenada, but our diplomatic people must be put to work to attract that kind of help for the country and bring it home for us so that we can benefit.
And let us move on, because I want to respect you two panelists' time. And of course, the next segment will be a very interesting one. There is a leadership contest happening in the opposition party in Trinidad and Tobago that's causing quite a stir. And so we would be getting into that segment shortly. But of course, in the first quarter of 2024, the gun amnesty featured prominently owing to issues of illegal firearm possession in the state of Grenada, as well as a spike in criminal offenses, some of which were also attributed to the preponderance of illegal firearms, of course, which, as the Prime Minister indicated, is not only a Grenada issue, but it is a regional issue. In fact, legislation is now afoot within the United States Congress that is aimed at or get towards stopping the illegal trafficking of firearms into territories and jurisdictions in the Caribbean region. And Jenny, I would begin with you there. Jenny, are you able to hear me still? I will try my best to ask the question. Around the gun amnesty, your thoughts on that?
Well, whatever one or two or three guns they might have get in person's hand in, I think the Attorney General in the Senate did damage to that when she announced that when you bring in your weapon, if it's connected to any crime, you would be picked up and questioned, of course, and it could be taken further. I'm paraphrasing here, but more or less that you would be held accountable, right? So now, whichever young man sitting there saying, you know what, let me bring in this gun, he or she would feel a little bit of discomfort in doing so, and think, well, I'm not going. And I don't think really that the gun amnesty was going to stop the spike in gun violence, right? We don't know how much guns are in Grenada. It's not coming in only by the port. I think as a matter of fact, I think what's coming in on the port is as a lesser percentage than what is coming in on the borders. I really do believe so. And so these guys, the gang violence is back. And they look at it as defending themselves, both sides. So I don't see them. I mean, just this past week, there was a shooting, actual shooting on the basketball court on the Carnage, right? They're playing sports, and we think we normally say sports would help take us out of this kind of violence with the young people, and they were playing sport. So much so that the game that was supposed to happen the day before in Grenada, that the people never or in town itself, but then the next game, one team did not show up for fair because I was told that the police was called in and did not show up. And I mean, look at the proximity. The CID, I think it's on Green Street, a stone throw away, and the central, I don't know the difference in them, the one up by the fire station, it's a stone throw away. And they were shooting there. So the amnesty, in my opinion, it's just a drop in the bucket. If we get one or two, well, we say, okay, that's two off the streets. but they have to do a lot more than the amnesty. First of
Well,
all,
I
they
believe,
have to find out.
yes, with respect, what they're saying is they're going to be doing the amnesty, but following the amnesty, there are going to be stiffer penalties, and they're going to adopt a no tolerance approach to the possession of illegal firearms in respect of amending the firearm legislation as it currently is.
But by the time they get to the no tolerance approach, 2 or 3 of our young persons might have died, and there's some they have to do to make stronger approach to community policing, whatever it takes. But of course, I don't think they have the manpower as well to do so. They were called in on the carnage and no officers showed up. None. I don't know if they didn't have the manpower, what the reason was, or transportation, but nobody showed up. So before we get to stringent measures, we're going to lose some young people, some young persons. And we have to try to stop that from happening.
William, the gun amnesty.
These guns are coming in the context of a market. There's a marketplace for the thing. There's a demand.
That's right.
What's feeding it?
Yes.
What is the payday behind the thing? So these guys are not particularly rational. They accept to say that, to my mind, they are prepared to take huge risks, and to the level of their own lives. So if a fella is in a position where what my life could go, I don't really, but in the pursuit of a value that I think I can get, if I pull this thing off, I need this gun, and I need some other guns around me. There goes. So there's a lot in my mind that's going to be involved. How do we create incentives or disincentives to affect the play there? I don't know. Those people who study this thing perhaps would know how to do that. But as an ordinary citizen, I imagine that the gun amnesty cannot stand alone. It has to be a part of a series of measures.
Well, it is part of a series of measures, William. It's but the legislation is included there. It's not only the amnesty, but it is paired with strengthening the legislation as we know it. I think, and of course, we can talk about the enforcement aspect of this, but we also have to look at it through a broader lens. What are those societal factors impacting the ability of the citizens to then turn to guns in the first place? So we have to look at all of those. Unemployment, we have to look at unemployment, we have to look at conflict resolution, parenting. Several factors have to take into account. It's not only looking at it narrowly through the lens of that gun amnesty. William.
We need stronger intelligence unit, if they do have one, on the ground. The general public, Dr. Bubb, knows where the heightened gun violence is happening. You hear the names of the places being called.
Yeah.
That's a good start. That's a good start. What happens after that? It happens in certain areas all the time.
Yeah, that's true. And therefore, do we have the resources to confront the players at the very scene of the storage of these guns?
Yeah.
Listen, I understand. I don't live in Guelph, and I am not attacking Guelph, but I understand that there are youngsters in schools in Guelph there who any number of them have their piece. They're going to secondary school, and after school, they're going in some houses to gamble, and they have their gun. So if I can hear that, it must be that the police in Guelph must have heard that. So what are they doing?
Yeah.
What are they doing?
While the investigation is going on, we have groups doing videotaping, gun shows, shooting off in the air, not hiding their faces.
See?
Right? Beating up a guy in the street with a gun and it videotaped and put out there in social media.
And of course, we have the influences of the Cayman Sixes of this world, from Trinidad and Tobago, and dancehall music, and the type of lyrics and scones in those songs and things like that. So let us quickly move on, because I do want to respect your time here, folks. An issue that emerged within the first quarter of 2024 has to do with the question of the illegal vending on the nation's streets. The physical, the Planning and Development Authority, of course, they are enforcing legislation on the books in respect of that type of illegal vending under the Visual Transformation Initiative of the administration, to clear the nation's sidewalks and streets and byways of not only illegal vending activities on crown lands, but derelict vehicles and things like that. And of course, in the past, we actually had the Minister of Transformation here who spoke to this issue. And that is an issue that is taking up some steam in respect of the vendors on the Port Highway. We actually had one of the vendors on the program who sort of indicated this very convoluted way in which she received approval to vend on the Port Highway. And, but now there appears to be a clash there. Have you folks been following that issue? Jenny, I'll begin with you.
As it deals with the port, if we're dealing with the port, we are trying to close the stable after the horse bolted. Now, every Monday morning you woke up and there was another little setup there, and nobody said anything, nobody did anything. They've been there, and now years have accumulated. You hear some of them say they've been there 20 years, right? It's an eyesore. For me, it is an eyesore, really, for the most part. Right, all of it, even the ones who probably been there 30 years. Nothing is being done, not even a little bit of paid. It's just an eyesore. However, it's how you deal with it. And when you get in mixed messages, when a minister and the attorney general could tell you one thing, and then the next thing you get a letter that says you have to move in 28 days and you have nowhere to go. But you sat there comfortably because you heard from government ministers that you have to move, but we are going to secure you. We are going to help you. We are going to build something for you just down the road from where you are, and you're going to sit comfortably. You're going to have bathrooms and water and electricity, the works, right? And then you get this letter that tells you you have to get up and move. As for the vendors on the sidewalk, that has become a hazard. It's hazardous for pedestrians, right? And more people coming. People putting up umbrella, people putting up tables. There's just nowhere for you to walk. And they get upset if you pass over their stuff and all of that. Yes, they have to move as well. And they said the market have space and they put them in. But the following day, you remove them today, and the following day you see people back out there vending. And they leave them for a few days or sometimes weeks and months. And then they get up one morning and you say, you have to move again. So there have to be some consistency. And you know how it goes with our people when you say they're poor and vulnerable. Some of them, they're not as poor and vulnerable because they're not paying taxes, they're not paying rent, they're not paying no utility bills. They bag everything and go home with it. However, it's the culture. So you have to, and we have to take care of them, as so to speak. So we don't just, the truth is they have families, they have kids they send to school, some of them have mortgages and things that they're paying from that. And they're trying to be independent. If you can't find a job, you have family in the States that send you a barrel and you sell the stuff. You're being independent. It's better than going and steal or beg. But I don't know, it's a lose-lose situation or a win-win situation. But so far, it's been a lose-lose situation.
Willie, the vending issue, and as I said
Yeah.
before, when that vendor appeared on the program, and I really wished at that time that the MP, who she pointed out as the one that gave her the approval, the initial approval to vend there, the MP for the town of St. George, Mr. Peter David. I was hoping that Mr. Peter David would have appeared on the program on that Sunday, but he avoided us on that Sunday. I wonder why. Because essentially the manner in which these vendors are given approval to vend on crown lands in places where they ought not to be vending in the first place, and this is not to look down on vendors. My aunt was a vendor of Carol Williams of blessed memory, but the way in which politicians, and I look at the political directorate now when I say this, gave them these approvals is the result of what we're seeing today. Willie?
Yeah, you see this the effect of populist politics, right? And so there is one thing for the politician to be seen to be helping the small man. There's another thing that we must accept, which is that the informal economy is going to expand and has been expanding in Grenada because employment in other fields have not been available to a number of people. And so they find, they identify a demand for something, and then they need to have a physical place in which to provide the goods or service. So we are building marketplaces all over the place. We are allowing them by word of mouth. People, you know, sometimes I wonder whether politician X or Y, minister X or Y of the last several years, and perhaps even today, really understand the extent of their ministerial authority. Because I don't know, in a case where something is governed by law, that any minister, any and every minister could pronounce on it. Typically in these statutes, a specific minister is the one who is able to say yes or no to a particular practice or pattern of behavior or in a certain place. So the point that I'm making, to put it simply, is that we've had political interference in these things that have encouraged people to establish these marketplaces without any concern for the consequences. And so now, when it comes to the point where there are good reasons to dismantle those arrangements, the whole question of process and how it is handled, those things become very, very important. The sensitivity, because why? One of the issues in this thing called the business of government is how ministers of government treat citizens. And sometimes the citizen has the call. Brother, he may not have a right, but he has a call on you, which forces you to treat with him in a particular way. So, this question of information, so that they understand why it is that they must move. It is always better, preferable, I would say. A good thing to say, okay, here is an alternative location where permission could be properly granted for you to ply your trade. But if you can't do that, then there is still the issue of implementing the laws on the books, and the laws that they are implementing now were not passed last week or last year. They've been there for a long time. And so there's hardly any administrative discretion to be exercised, because the folks at physical planning are going to come at you with a law. And typically the law would provide X days.
Yes.
In the context of giving notice. So when the functionaries at physical planning, with the provisions in the law, say 28 days or whatever the case might be, a politician comes, he has no law in his favor, but he tells you, stay there, man, 6 months, you have a problem.
And then the vendors will tell you, the minister tell me to stay there, the MP tell me to stay there, and this transcends administrations. This has been going on for a long time, and I'm sure in this case, this is what will happen. As the vendor said when she appeared on the Bubb Report, Peter David tell me that I could vend there. Look at the letter I get from Peter David, and then she mentioned something about going to a copyright office, which totally confused me, because I'm thinking, what does the copyright office have to do with roadside vending in the state of Grenada? And then she also mentioned somebody from physical planning unit came to say, well, you know, she can keep her place there, someone in a khaki pants or in a white shirt or something like that, that she can stay there, you know, but that she has to move the thing back or whatever it is, you know. So it's just absolutely convoluted, and I do wish that we can get to a solution to this, because again, any nation's capital city should be its showpiece to the world. Yes, it should be its showpiece to the world in that respect. Now, two final issues, panel. One has to do with a recent diplomatic appointment that we had, which will dovetail into an issue that has been raised in respect of, some might say, nepotism in respect of government appointments. Is it nepotism, or is it a par for the course in respect of the political process in Grenada? That has to do with the appointment as confirmed by the foreign minister, the appointment of Mr. Sylvester Quallis as Grenada's High Commissioner. He will be Grenada's very first High Commissioner stationed in Ottawa after many years. Grenada did not have a singular representative in Ottawa, but shared that representation with OECS territories. As I understand it, this will be the first singular High Commissioner being appointed to Ottawa representing the state of Grenada. So let's start there. The diplomatic appointment, Jenny.
Yeah, I have heard of it. It has a
William, let's go with Jenny first, and then I'll get to you.
Oh,
yes.
Of course.
Yes. In this case, I would say ladies first.
Well, Dr. Budd, it's some kind of ism. Whether it's nepotism, it's some kind of ism taking place there. It's a lot of things, in my opinion, that I see just wrong about this appointment. Even if Sylvester Quallis was a career diplomat at the age of 68, unwell, have a chronic non-communicable disease, it is wrong. It has to be nepotism or some job for the boys. I am hoping we can get the reason why Sylvester Quallis. Because even if you say you want to send a politician, as the minister said, sometimes they just do send politicians. Let's get a younger politician. Let's get a well-rounded politician who probably have some sort of experience or credentials in foreign exchange or international relations, something. Because it's a new office. So I don't see that we have room for learning on the job. We preach it's the capital of Canada and we should be seen in the capital and we should have representation in the capital. Let's get proper representation. One of the things they spoke of is transforming the diplomatic corps, and that's where the career diplomats came in. They were going to train young persons, and we were going to. So what happened to that? What happened to the 3,000 applications they had? Where are these people? They dissolved. What happened? How do we reach, at this stage, hiring the chairman of the NDC at 68 years to send him to Ottawa as a high commissioner? I don't understand it, and it's just mind-boggling. It's bothering, and it's too blatant, and we just need to get some more answers as to why this is happening at this stage.
Mhm. Absolutely. And of course, the administration did promise a cadre of young people in various positions of government. And this is not mean to be ageist. I'm sure on my part, it's not ageism, because I have an issue when the other side chides Keith Mitchell for his age. In the same way, I would have an issue where anyone on the other side of the political fence will chide those in the NDC on account of their age as well. I think the age question it should be neutral in respect of politics, even modes of dress. That's just my view, because one side, the NDC folks, would criticize Keith Mitchell for wearing quote-unquote tight pants, but would have no issue. And then the other side would critique Deacon Mitchell for wearing unconventional clothing. Some say that he wears slippers.
Yeah, they do.
Quite frankly, I don't think these issues should be in the national political discourse at all. Jenny.
Just one thing I want to talk about, the age, right?
Yes.
The process coming up from young into old is one thing, but starting off old is another thing with no experience. And so they could talk about Dr. Mitchell age all they want. He started at 34. He came up, he has the experience, but you can't start off at 68 with no experience. None. Zit. What are we doing?
Yeah. William,
Yeah.
you were a diplomat at one stage.
Indeed. Well, this is a serious issue. So let's begin. In addition to what Jenny has put on the table, let me just add a couple of points, right? One of the things is that, and we bring us very sober minds to this thing. The diplomatic missions exist for very specific purposes. They are receiving countries or organizations where a political appointee tends to be more suitable than a career diplomat. So, for example, in the case of Grenada, let us take Cuba. You can send a political man in Cuba. Nothing is, Let's take United Nations. You can send a political person there, right? Let us take China. You could send a political person there. But London, and now come Ottawa. So let us understand Canada. What's going on? Canada is a mature democracy, a developed country, very, very, very steeped in protocol and the conduct of its international affairs. So you look to see what are the interest areas between Grenada and Canada. I would say, because I've tried to address it in my mind, that with respect to Canada, Grenada would have an interest in development aid, skills transfer, education, HRD, technology transfers, and so on, not politics. We don't have any interest with Canada over purely political matters. So that post, if you're going to open and establish that post and assign somebody there, you could see straight away that the primary purpose ought to be the mobilization of resources to aid Grenada's development. And you look also at who's in Ottawa. What are the international agencies that are headquartered in Ottawa that would be relevant, meaning be of interest to Grenada? So you want to assign to that post a certain caliber and competence. And I would shut up after saying this. I saw on my television, as I'm sure most of you, the celebrations of our nationals overseas for Independence 50. And every time I saw the display, I saw national pride. So it seems to me that the government of Grenada, in this particular case, when it's considering that appointment, ought also to ask itself, how is this choice likely to impact on the Grenadian people who live and work in Canada? Is it going to lift their image? Would they feel uplifted? Would they feel that there is respectability here? That Grenada has come to Canada with a quality Grenadian, male or female, to represent Grenada in an important country of the world? No, government has power. That power can be abused. That power can be used without reference to anybody. In fact, some people get very upset when others purport to make suggestions. They say they ain't taking advice from nobody. Well, when the NDC was formed, I recall this thing, what was the motto? It said, let the people's voices be heard. If that is to be the case, it seems to me that you have to be prepared to listen. So I'm weaving a thing here for you. There are several issues involved in my view. So if it is, and it appears to be that the appointment of the gentleman is happening in unique personal circumstances that face him, well, my God, find an appropriate match. Find an appropriate match for him. Find an appropriate match for him where you can provide the assistance that he needs in his personal circumstances without compromising the good name and integrity of the country at large and its interests. So I can't motivate this one because I don't see how it will help Grenada. I can't see it.
But there was also curiosity. I'm going to bring in Ms. Simon, and we'll move on to the next issue. The other curiosity for me is that Mr. Quallis is an active member of the National Democratic Congress's political executive. So the question is, now that he has a diplomatic appointment, what happens to that appointment? And in respect of his political appointment on the NDC executive. Does that make sense?
Well, we NDC, and I say we. NDC.
Well, we, because that's your natural party, isn't it? It's a joke, okay?
There was they always have a deputy chairman. I was deputy chair of the party for a few years. So I guess the deputy chairman will step in until the next convention. So but NDC, this NDC, as I'm seeing it, have not yet seen the line or know where the line is between government and the party. That line has been blurred, and to me, it disappears in some instances. Because right here we have in the diaspora, the ambassador to the diaspora is a member of the
Forrester. Yes.
He's a member of the executive, the NEC, of the NDC as we speak, and he calls in on every radio station to protect the NDC, and he's in every function. He was out on the tarmac to receive the prime minister coming from Cuba just last weekend. So it didn't even matter. Quallis might as well be the chairman, remain the chairman, and be there because we have Zoom. So he could well be the chairman and be the high commission. It's just a lot. It's just a hot mess, really.
Quickly, William. I just want to respond to Ms. LaQuisha Roberts. Yeah, she's saying that Akima was also part of the NNP. Akima Paul, at the time of her ambassadorial appointment, was not a member of the NNP's executive. There is a difference between a rank and file member of a political party versus being on the executive of a party. I want to be very clear on that. Go ahead, Willie. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Jenny is touching something that I think is very important. You see, the separation in a way between the cabinet, i.e. government and the party, right? The cabinet is not the place for political strategizing. That is the party. But if you have a weak party, if you look at it, the general secretary has been put out, the one with experience, he's gone out. Your chairman is going out and so on. There's very little evidence that the existing arrangements at the level of the party is modernizing in any significant way. In other words, the political thinking, the political strategizing, you're not seeing any evidence of that flowing into the marketplace. So there are going to be problems there, and I'm sure they're going to say, mind your business, we're going to fix it. They're going to hire somebody.
That's what they would say.
Outside.
They would dismiss that.
They'll hire somebody from outside when the crunch comes and say, come and patch this up for us, and so on and so on. But the point is that the cabinet is not the place for political strategy. The cabinet is the place for policy making. And the party is the place for political strategizing. If you have a weak party structure, if the caliber of the people at the party center is such that you ain't getting output that making sense, you have a problem. You're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not government that win elections, it's parties that win elections.
Well, the NDC would say, I mean, given its history in its past governance approaches, that they forgot the party and instead focused on government. And perhaps one may say that they're probably learning from the lessons of the past. Both of you should know this. Both of you should know this. You sat in the party.
But you learn bad lessons. Making sense.
You're not learning from the past at all.
Yeah. And finally, folks, that has to do with government statutory boards and the appointment, again, political appointments. I remember the Prime Minister declaring at the time during the election campaign that he wants the most suitably qualified people to sit on government boards. Has that come to reality, Jenny?
No, it hasn't. Nope, it hasn't. And as a result, you're hearing of so many resignations from the different boards. We don't get those. They don't tell us these things, but it's happening. There are boards that has not yet been gazetted, and they're about to be dissolved. Huh? And so it's so political. Or the ones that I know of, the boards that I know, are political. The development, I mean, you just name them: gravel and concrete, lottery. They're political, and they're causing problems because they feel from chairperson come down that they could do what they want, and they are doing what they want with the country's the financial resources in a lot of cases. Lottery is a trampoline. Development bank is another one, but I normally call it the cabinet bank. I mean, but it's because they are very political. The boards are political. Look at even the Public Service Commission. It's political. The commission, we couldn't find nobody else, not one or two persons to add to that commission. They're not NDC executive or been NDC executive or been right up there with the NDC. I mean, come on. The Public Service Commission, we're in trouble.
Willie?
See, the patronage system.
But can't we, so here is what I would say. And the next time I have the Prime Minister on the Bubb Report, I would ask him this. In hindsight, does he think that it's sort of difficult for us to have non-partisan, non-political people on government boards, as the previous administration did, as has been the case since independence, or even during Grenada's colonial era? Willie?
Well, the issue is not is that for me, The thing is not that you don't have should not have political people. The question is the balance. The second aspect is the competence. If you're going to put a political person there, that person must have adequate competence for the area. Thirdly, these statutory bodies, as far as I am aware, having been served on a number of them, not during the NDC, but during the NNP. Trust me. That's when I served on a number of them. These bodies the law does not provide for executive chairmanship. So when a fellow is the chairman of the board and he going around every morning attending in the office as if he's some executive manager, the law does not allow that.
Yeah.
So what's going on? And these entities are public bodies. So the citizen has a right to raise any matter up to the level of the court regarding his interests with respect to what is experienced at the hands of these public bodies. So it's serious business. So it tells us that when we constituting these bodies, yes, the penchant to put a few political people under the patronage system, we understand that there must be some allowance for some of that. But you have people of all kinds of skill and talent who support the party. Find the appropriate ones there. And then the other thing is that you must ensure that they have a proper grounding of what it is that the law provides for them and does not provide. Proper grounding. Otherwise, you're going to run into serious problem. These bodies have under their control immense public resources, and they were set up so that the central government would not be bogged down with trying to handle those things, but you put it in more specialized hands. The accountability is still that of the government of Grenada. You see, but it is very serious business, and it's part of my concern regarding how we shape in the next 50. Yeah? How we shape in the next 50.
And they must not be hungry mouth and beggy.
Wonderful.
Because they will get bought.
William is having a good laugh there. The final issue that we're going to talk about has to do, and Mr. Barrett, welcome to the Bubb Report, sir. It's good to have you again here.
Hi, good morning, and good morning to your guests as well.
Hello, hi.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, Mr. Barrett, we will be having you here in the second segment of the program. But, and this is a conversation that has to do with succession of leadership in Caribbean political parties. That debate is happening in Grenada. It's now happening in Trinidad and Tobago. It's happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And who are those leaders? Kamla Persad-Bissessar, who you contested against as the political leader of the UNC, for leadership of the UNC. And in Grenada, we have Dr. The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, the leader of the New National Party. So, Mr. Barrett, we'll be coming back to you shortly to have this conversation. But I want to end this segment on the question of the leadership, folks. That's Mr. Joseph, William, and Jenny. In respect of the leadership, Mr. Hamlet Mark came out with a scathing article on the state of the New National Party and its leadership woes, shall we say. And of course, Ms. Simon, you had a lot to say about it, but I want to begin with Willie's thoughts on that. Willie, because it appears that one of the common denominators in this leadership conversation now is the Honorable Peter David. So let's get your thoughts on, let's tee it off by talking about the Honorable Peter David and his role in respect of leadership succession in the New National Party.
Yeah, you see, what is the context? Higher up, I said the demographic changes significant demographic changes have occurred in the Grenadian society. alongside many other changes. The time for some people, that time has gone. It has gone.
Yeah.
The thing has shifted.
Yeah.
It has shifted. But you see, we're carrying forward the old model, the presumption of leadership. The presumption of leadership. So, in a case where we saw that the NDC brought in a gentleman who was unknown to the politics, and in 6 months' time, we put the thing in his hands. So I call it the 6-month rule. If it worked for the NDC, it could work for the NNP.
Yeah.
So if I'm in the NNP, I would say, listen, guys, let us go find a fairly young, attractive Grenadian to head up the party. Listen, in this period in which we live, the old thing called charisma has given way to something called pairing. Pairing. Under the charisma model, right, there was this thing called loyalty. Loyalty to a man who is the leader. Under the new model, the pairing model, there is no loyalty, there is association. I associate with X. I am not loyal to X. I can withdraw from X at any time. Listen, the thing has changed. You look at it, look at the level of scrutiny under which this present regime finds itself, unprecedented in our history. Again, because the thing has shifted. So, if you want to do well in the politics and you're in the NNP, you don't offer Grenada, Peter. You go find a young, attractive, credible, and offer that person to the public. But we are seeing the politics through the eyes of the party. We are not seeing it through the eyes of the public. So in other words, we are selling the public whatever we want to sell them, regardless of what they want to buy, what they are prepared to buy. And that is the problem. So, having said all of that, I concede that in the case of Dr. Mitchell, his ownership rights of the NNP must be respected. But it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. It has, when we have ownership rights at a certain point, what do? We pass on the estate in various forms to various people. We pass it on. All right? So that's for him to reckon with. I understand why he wants to get back. I understand the theory of the case that they're now pushing and believe is valid and so on. In my mind, it is not valid. I will repeat it now.
But there is also, there is also a second theory of the case that has been articulated, and that is that the National Democratic Congress would be able to mount a successful re-election campaign when the next elections are constitutionally due, with Dr. Mitchell at the helm of the new National Party, because he has become, in many respects, a liability not only for his party, but he has come, in many respects, sort of a retrogressive leader in the eyes of Grenadians, a vintage leader. I don't want to say old, but a vintage leader, and Grenadians do want to see new faces in the party.
Yeah, you see, I agree with that. I accept that.
Yeah.
But Peter falls on that sword also for different reasons. You see, and we must understand, by this time, Peter has aged, as I have. You see, we are not 50 and 40. We are heading towards 70. Where are we going? Yeah. And we have interesting and disturbing histories. So I ask myself, what is it that a Peter leader is going to offer Grenada in the next 50 years of its independence? What? We have seen him over the years, a smiling face, a charismatic nod. That's what you're going to offer us going forward. So get serious when you're faced with something on the other side. I've described it. I've just described it. So the charismatic model can't stand up against that. And for that reason and other reasons, your answer is not Peter. Go find a young and viable and attractive Grenadian man or woman. And the 6 months rule, and that's what should give you comfort. It played for the NDC, it could play for the NNP. 6 months. It can happen. So be confident. Go and do the search and bring us somebody who makes sense. I am looking forward to that.
Novelty. I hear you saying novelty.
As soon as that happens, I join the NNP. I want to be there before I die. So
well,
please.
This is you've broken some news here on the Bubb Report.
Yes.
I hope that if Dr. Mitchell is listening, that he's actually sitting down to hear you say that. If he heard you say that.
Well, you see, you go and play the tape of him in his rally in Karakou for the elections, and he speaks of me there. Go and play it.
Interesting.
Go and play it.
Interesting.
When you find it, call me, message me.
I will. All right.
The rally in Karakou.
Jenny?
You know, you made a statement about Dr. Mitchell being, his age or so would play a factor in NNP winning the next election. I beg to differ with that comment because the people that are saying so, they're not voting for NNP. They're the ones that are not voting for the NNP. No, the NNP, there are, I don't know, there's a thing that one or two executive members or older heads who've been, and it happened in the NDC. That's what had fooled Peter David, that he had some support, but the support was limited. The masses is who you need to support. Let us remember that NNP has a base of 33,000 strong. Huh? That is their base. And NDC like a 25 or thereabout strong. No, almost 10,000 more. And it's the masses. You remember when we threw Jonah overboard, what happened? The masses of the NNP brought him back. People wanted change, the ground shift. Some people would blow away with the wind and they followed the wind, and NDC won the election. It's almost a carbon copy. And so, when you listen to the base of the NNP, they still see Dr. Mitchell as their savior. Now, I hasten to say that I think whoever Dr. Mitchell chooses, for want of a better word, to lead the party after he stepped down or when he stepped down.
Why should it be his choice and not the rank and file
as
choice?
I said, for want of a better word, that's how we said. Or not chooses, but what's the word when they support it? Like
endorse.
Endorse.
Yes.
Endorse. That's the word I've been looking for, right? Because you get it. I mean, Uncle Tilly endorsed Nazenberg, right? So when that happens, whoever that person is, then the base would rally around that person as well. But I would not sit here and say if Dr. Mitchell runs as leader of the NNP in the next election, that NNP would lose. I don't, because the base, the masses is who we have to pay attention to. Yes, there are those who think he should move away. I think so too. He should step aside for now. And not because he's not capable. Right? However, we have to look at and listen to the base, the masses. They're the ones who carry the election. And that is what happened when it came down to choosing Tillman Thomas over Peter David. That is what happened. He had a lot of the hierarchies supporting him, but that was not enough to carry him through. The base did not want him. The base stuck with Tillman Thomas.
And on that note, on the note of Tillman Thomas, we are going to end here with some final comments from both of you. I hope Mr. Tillman Thomas is listening.
That NNP vote, that NNP base, Jenny, the advantage is located in 3 constituencies. 3. So it's not widespread. Yeah. And that's the problem. It's St. George Northwest, St. Mark, and St. Andrew Northeast. 3 constituencies that the NDC has never won. That is where the concentration in terms of volume, magnitude of the NNP base is. So it's not going to make a difference. That is NNP territory. The question is, when we go to the other constituencies, what is the picture there? You see, and that's where the contest, there's no contest between NNP and NDC and St. George Northwest. There wouldn't be for some time. St. Mark, St. George, St. Andrew Northeast. No contest. That's NNP territory. Yeah. So we have to fine-tune it a little bit and understand and appreciate where the thing is located and where it's not. And that is where we begin to see how we play the thing out, in my view. So thanks a lot.
Final comments from the both of you. Jenny, I would begin with you.
Dr. Bubb, thank you for having me on. I am not a political analyst. I am a political commentator. I mostly do my opinion on such. When I have facts, and I give my opinion in some cases. And I would end by saying, EBAD. That was a statement from Minister Clarice Modest during the 2008-13 event. I want to end by saying, EBAD. Things bad.
Okay. William?
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, and for the opportunity, and also for sharing with Jenny on the platform this morning. I think we're in a state where, in Grenada, where there's a call for us to reckon with our reality as it unfolds. We need to make something happen that is going to take us to a better place in the context of the 50 years ahead of us. This is the period when we ought to start it. And I don't think we're getting it at this point. So my appeal to the authorities would be, steady yourself, give it some thought, think this thing over. Because that scrutiny that I talked about is very pervasive. And it can break you, or it can build you. It will only build you if people believe, as they scrutinize you, they find that you're working towards making Grenada a better place, giving us a beautiful government. If we're not going to get that, then we're back to where we started. Fair game either side. Thanks a lot.
Gentlemen, lady and gentlemen, thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. Again, we try to accommodate all perspectives on the program, and certainly we welcome your perspectives. Viewers and listeners, we are going to take a quick break and come back with our final guest for this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Please stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, over in Trinidad and Tobago, there appears to be an internal rebellion in the ranks of the United National Congress, as some in the rank and file are calling for new leadership. The UNC's leadership team is up to 2025. Traditionally, the party retains the leader and the executive it has in entering an election year in order to prevent the party from being divided with internal party fighting. Now, the current executive term of the UNC is up in June of this year, but it would appear as if its current leader, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar, is rubbishing claims that she needs to make way for new leadership. Does it sound familiar? Now, here to make sense of the ongoing developments in the UNC is Mr. Vincent Barrett, who was a former Minister of Government in the People's Partnership Administration and who himself also contested once the internal leadership of the United National Congress. Of course, Mr. Barrett is no longer a member of the UNC, but he was a close compatriot of the late Basdio Pandey. He appeared on the Bubb Report on the occasion of the passing of the late Basdio Pandey, the first Prime Minister of Indian descent in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm happy again to be joined by Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett, welcome back to this week's Bubb Report, sir. It's good to have you. It's your second time here, and I'm really happy that you're able to join us, sir. Welcome.
Good morning to you, Callan, and good morning to all of your listeners and viewers. And I must say, I actually enjoyed your previous interview with the Grenadians.
Yes.
It's so much in common with Trinidad, with the isms that Jenny spoke about, the nepotism and all the other isms and the incompetence and the political overreach by ministers and so on, all very familiar to us here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Very, very much so. And, and I think our development paths are so intertwined in so many respects. Our futures, our realities are so intertwined. Now, Mr. Barrett, the last time you came on the Bubb Report, you caused quite a stir in the national community in Grenada, at least when you said that the current leader of the UNC was governing the party as a cult leader. In fact, you said it was a cult. And much to my surprise, members of her own current rank and file in the party last week also made those claims. So I'm not sure if you're a prophet, if you are Nostradamus, if you have a crystal ball in respect of, but shall we say, I suppose you said it, I told you so, yes?
Well, it doesn't give me a lot of pleasure, actually, to be reinforcing what I said previously. The reality is that in 2015, I resigned from the House of Representatives as a senator because I felt that the party needed to restructure itself, and until and unless the party did that, it would never be in a position to get back into government. I hold those views even more firmly today based on what has happened over the last 9 years. And yes, the party has essentially evolved around the personality of its leader. The leader herself has ensured that there's very little in the line of succession for anyone to take over from her. And all of the institutions of the party have basically collapsed, so that the members of the party, whatever there is left, can find no voice or no forum to express any opinions on the way forward. The leader has essentially surrounded herself with, as you would have heard last week from a couple of the MPs, have essentially surrounded herself with people who have very little choices in life, as one of your guests said earlier on, beggy people, who really, they could not get a job outside of politics if they were to come out. So their only options in life really is to blindly support the political leader. And essentially she surrounded herself with enough of those people to keep on protecting her position unfortunately, to the detriment of the population and to the membership of the party.
Now, let us talk about the mechanisms and the workings of the internal election process. What happens? Is it a case that whenever there is an internal election, that by default the leadership of the organization is also challenged during that election process, or is it only a rank and file election process?
No, so the constitution of the party is very clear that the positions of the national executive is up for grabs every 2 years, every 24 months. The position of leader, political leader, is up every 3 years, 36 months. And there was a reason that the drafters and the framers of the Constitution arranged it in that way, and it would have been to ensure that there was some kind of crossover when with the existing leader, so that a new NATEX comes in and has an opportunity to work with the existing leader, and then of course 1 year later the position of leader then comes up for grabs. What Mrs. Bisessa has done continuously over the last 9 years is she has ensured that the position of leader and the NATEX are held on the same day, essentially filing her own slate, so that so she has not risked the fact that a NATEX may come in without her at the helm that may not be totally loyal to her. So what she does is she fills the national executive with people who she knows are completely loyal to her, and then she fights with that particular slate. So it's against the Constitution, but in the past, the courts in Trinidad have not really opted to get involved in the political processes or the processes of political parties. And so as a result of that, she's been able to keep her stranglehold on the party.
Now, I do know also that there is a candidate selection process that precedes any national election. In the context of these, I call them rebels, because really, if you're going to be challenging someone, a maximum leader in the way that Kamala Persad-Bissessar is now positioning herself, then what will happen to them? Do you believe that perhaps they may face the same fate of others like yourself who may
let me state
ousted from the party?
Well, I didn't face that fate. I actually resigned. I left voluntarily because I just felt I wasn't willing to be a part of a setup that was not set up to succeed, and I felt it would be wasting my time essentially, working really in almost in a negative way, knowing that we were not doing anything that would actually advance the cause of developing the party. So, but with regard to these guys, what they've done is they've said, and rightly so, that look, if it is we're due to have national executive elections in June, why would you start to select candidates for a general election that has not yet been called? And it's these NATEX members who will determine who the candidates for the general election would be. Why not, as would be expected, hold our internal elections first and let the new national executive select the candidates for the general election, which is constitutionally due in August of 2025, more than a year away from today. What has happened is these few quote-unquote dissidents that Mrs. Persad-Bissessar has called them, they have come out and said, listen, it is clear that you don't intend to have an internal election. It is clear that you want to defer it, and that's the reason why you are now selecting candidates for the general election with this old national executive, because you're clearly not going to hold these internal elections. Now, what that has done is, if the process continues as expected, none of these guys who are incumbent members of parliament, it is highly unlikely that any of them will be chosen again for their existing constituencies. So they are going to have to now determine what their political futures look like But they've been lauded and praised by large sections of the country for having having come out and stood up to what essentially is a cult. It is a cult. I've said that before. I continue to maintain
you said that on this program, and I was taken. I was a bit jolted by that.
And the reality is that we have an extremely poor performing government in Trinidad and Tobago, and the likelihood is that if the UNC continues on its current path, they will not be in a position to be successful at the next general election. I think that's what's of great concern to the majority of the country, not just these MPs, not just members of the party, but there are a lot of people who do not support the PNM government, but they need to have a strong opposition. So as a direct result, they are now supportive of the moves that these guys have made.
Mm-hmm. But historically, the United National Congress, they have only been able to mount successful electoral victories with a coalition. That has been the case in respect of the People's Partnership, of which you are a member. But there were also some issues there in respect of the alliances that Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar were trying to broker with the likes of Mr. Gary and others in recent time. So it would appear that it's not only internal, but it also appears as if there are machinations in respect of how she functions with those third parties who would want to caucus with her in a general election.
And simply because these marriages of convenience, as I call them, are superficial and cosmetic. There is no basic ideology that holds the groups together, as happened in the People's Partnership. We had 5 different entities getting involved, and it started to fracture almost immediately because it was really a marriage of convenience. It was just brought together very quickly in 2010 to oust the then PNM. But it was superficial. There was very little grounding. There was no work that was done even post the collaboration to actually hold it together. There was a lot of infighting. And then when you have poor leadership and weak leadership like Mrs. Bissessar's, you're always going to have situations where vacuums are filled and generally not in the most positive of ways. So the population, of course, having been burnt on more than one occasion with these cosmetic collaborations, are very fearful of giving it another opportunity because they feel that they've been let down on so many occasions before. And it happened, of course, as you know, with the NAR government in 1986 and then again in 2010.
Yes. But it's interesting that you say in respect of the fact that even with the candidacy and the quality of candidate that Kamala Prasad-Bissessar would be in a general election, that she would still lose given the political conditions and the socioeconomic and crime and safety conditions in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, you look at what's happening in the hospital. That is an unmitigated, a tragic disaster of epic proportions. I don't think I've ever heard of this happening in the English-speaking Caribbean. I mean, then you have the issue of the out of control crime that's also occurring. There's also this issue of this dismissive arrogance from the administration when people raise questions, when the opposition at least raises questions around their spending, their travel spending. For example, you saw how the Prime Minister responded to that last week. So even with all of these issues occurring on the ground in Trinidad and Tobago, what I hear you saying is, and of course people also have political fatigue, that they are still going to re-elect the People's National Movement government.
Yeah, and there are many more issues. I mean, there are a lot more social issues. There's cost of living. There is the issue of transportation gridlock on a daily basis. Most people, for those who don't know what's happening in Trinidad with regard to infrastructure, so most people in Trinidad, particularly those who live in the Southland, they will actually spend generally about 5 hours in traffic every day, 2.5 hours into Port of Spain and 2.5 hours back. So you can imagine the level of productivity when they get to work, their state of mind, And also when they get back home, many of them have to, then attend to children. They have to do homework with children. They have to cook. They lead regular lives. And when you sap 5 hours a day, non-productive time out of these people, you can well imagine the state of mind of a lot of people. They're basically like zombies walking around or just existing. So there are a myriad of issues. There are a lot of mental health issues in Trinidad. There have been a number of suicides. There are a number of suicide pacts between husband and wife. And this last week, a child was beheaded. A 4-year-old child was beheaded by her stepfather. There are huge issues in Trinidad and Tobago. The problem is that the population, as badly off as they think they are, they don't see themselves better off with the UNC, because the UNC has not presented itself in any form or fashion to provide leadership, to provide hope to the country that, yes, we know things are bad, but we are going to make it better. It is simply a case with them of hoping that the PNM will fail and that people will hold their noses and run to the UNC and vote for them. It's not happening, because we have a different generation of people today. The older ones who were deeply loyal to a party or to a leader, as one of your guests was saying earlier on today, is long gone. People want to know that a political organization is going to make their lives better. So it's not just a question of, because I look a certain way or I'm from a particular geographic location, that I will continue to stain my finger for one party or the other. Yes, you have your diehards, of course you do, but you have a growing middle that is becoming more and more active and more outspoken, and more or less and less loyal to a political party.
Absolutely. And Mr. Barrett, finally, where do we go from here? I mean, the same conversation has been had in Grenada in respect of the future leadership of the new National Party, as I said, in the TN, as well as in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Both leaders, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez and Dr. Keith Mitchell in Grenada, even though Dr. Mitchell has been telegraphing for the longest while that he would be leaving, but he gets triggered every time somebody mentions convention. He said we should not be talking about convention. And the party has not had a convention in the last 2 years. And there is this song and dance over what that convention process would look like and whether or not folks would actually challenge him in the convention. And some folks are tiptoeing around the question, but it's not really. What does it say? What is it about the structure of our political parties in the Caribbean that's built around entrenched leadership, that when it's time for there to be a transition, that these tensions begin to occur?
Well, we're very quick to talk about the Westminster system, right, when it suits us.
Yes.
But as you know, in the true Westminster system, leaders, once they've lost once, and certainly once they've lost twice, they would make a graceful exit. For some reason in the Caribbean, and I think Jamaica might be the exception. I remember PJ Patterson leaving office. I remember the leader of the opposition, maybe 8 years or so ago, I can't remember. It was his first outing as leader of the opposition, and he lost, and he actually resigned that night. I don't remember his name offhand. So Jamaica may be an exception, but it appears that for the rest of the Caribbean, because of the status and the power that goes with the office, it seems to be addictive to some people, because for them it's not just a job, for them it's their life, and so therefore they seem to resist wanting to demit and pass on the baton to somebody who might be more capable, and certainly someone who might be more reflective of what future generations require. But the point made earlier on, how do we shape the next 50, is a very relevant point for many of the governments of the Caribbean, and more so for the people of the Caribbean, because the world is moving on very, very quickly with things like, artificial intelligence and all kinds of different things. The world is moving on. In Trinidad, we're still practicing politics that was relevant 50 years ago, from the days of Capital Day when Williams. We're still practicing race politics to a certain extent, chopping up and dividing the population as best we can. It's either Indian or African, or it's 1% or 99%. It's knife and fork Indian against rural Indian. Politicians essentially are looking after themselves. They're looking after the people that's very close to them, and quite frankly, it's the population that's suffering. But the population is waking up, and an intervention, I'm almost certain, will be made. This current scenario is untenable, and I think unacceptable to most Trinidadians and Tobago.
Yes, yeah. Mr. Barrett, thank you as always for providing this very valuable context to what's happening with our cousins to the south. I say our cousins and not our neighbors, because we do have very strong cultural and social ties to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Mr. Barrett, thank you for appearing on the program this week, sir.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Viewers and listeners, that's Mr. Vassant Barrett, who came into the Bubb Report this week to comment on developments in respect of the leadership, the future leadership of the United National Congress in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. There is a rank and file rebellion happening in that party against its leader, Ms. Kamala Persad-Bissessar. They want her gone. They want her out, because they're saying that with Kamala Persad-Bissessar as the political leader of the UNC, that the UNC will not stand a chance in mounting a successful electoral victory in the Trinidad and Tobago elections, which are constitutionally due next year. So we are watching the space to see how that will unfold and whether or not their predictions are going to come true in respect of the future of the United National Congress. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, wishing everyone a pleasant week. Take care. We will see you next week for another edition of the Bubb Report. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah. Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.